If you're just getting here, and go ahead and get logged into the Pear Deck, please. All right, so far I have responses and correct responses from Demetrius, Drake, Luke, Martin, Oscar. Also have a response from Bianca, waiting on 3 more here. And I'm going to go ahead and lock this up in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, y'all. The correct response, which most of you got, was answer choice number D. And so this question, this is one thing that I always get confused with is, let's see, is like the concept of like replacing versus adding. Sometimes I don't read. Did I say number again? Oh, geez. Luke, why you gotta point that out? Number D. Okay, whatever. Letter D. Is a concept of replacing versus adding. Sometimes I think that it's telling me to add the sentence when it says replace. This question is asking you to replace sentence 28, not to add anything. If you look at number 28, it is asking for like a call to action. So you want to find the answer that is most similar to the meaning of calling to action. And number D, I did it again. I just did it again. And option D deliberately says, take action now to protect your skin and avoid this life-threatening disease later, versus the other 3 don't very clearly communicate the concept of taking action, not as well as option D does. All right, here's your next one. These answer choices are a little bit longer. Same type of question, though. I'm going to put a 1-minute timer here. All right, I'm going to unlock this really quickly. Martin, if you want to put your answer in, I'll hold it for 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. All right, y'all, looks like most of you got it, all but one person. The correct answer is answer choice C. The reason it is not answer B is because all of this paragraph is sort of leaning to communicate that this research is still continuing. And B says, like, yes, it's a major city we're excavating, but it doesn't include some of the same vocab that C does that hints at the fact that they're going to continue working on it. It's more of just like a statement that's not implying any more future research. Cool. Good job, y'all. All right, I'm going to go over really quickly how my team's channels are set up. I made a little bit of changes which hopefully are helpful. We're going to talk about direct versus indirect clauses, practice undo exit ticket on Pear Deck, and then we're going to talk about Renstar and set some goals. All right. So I set up our team's channels a little bit differently than I had them in the past. So this is the general channel, mostly where I'll post announcements. And if you have homework, notice that there is homework tonight to read Chapter 3 of Animal Farm. Hopefully my first class ended early, so hopefully we'll end early too, and we'll be able to read the homework in class, and then you won't have any homework. Here is where I'm going to put all of the audiobooks and PDFs of Animal Farm, just in case you ever miss one or you need to look back at one. I'm just going to put them all here separated by chapter. There's only 10 chapters, so this won't get too long. I'm going to put the recordings for every day, so I'm just recording the class right now, so I'll upload it later. If you click the link, it takes you to a YouTube video, so I'm recording on stream, and then I download it and put it on YouTube because I think YouTube technically tends to have less technical difficulties than YouTube does. So if you ever miss a class, you'll be able to find the recordings here. And then if you ever need makeup work, I'm putting the links to everything that I've graded here. So if you ever miss an assignment, you can find it under makeup work. If you ever miss a class, you can find it here. And if you ever need to look at any of the audiobooks or PDFs, you can find that here. So you shouldn't need to access these things unless you miss a class or miss an assignment, but I figured that putting them here in channels is easier than putting them in files, so hopefully that is helpful. Okay, what else did I need to say? I think that's it. Oh, we will be taking Renstar in class tomorrow. We took it in the beginning of the year. This is mandatory and will be both a completion grade, so you will get a formative assessment grade for completing it. If you complete it, you get 100. If you don't complete it, you get a 0 until you complete it. And then I'm going to be entering a separate column, which is going to be extra credit for if you meet your growth goal, which we are going to set here at the end of class. If it's not taken, you'll be required to take it on your own time, and we are probably going to have to call home if you don't take it. So just take it tomorrow. It's in class. You don't want to have to make it become, I can't speak right now. You don't want it to become homework. I already said that. Okay, are y'all ready? Ready to talk about clauses? Okay, so every Monday we're going to be doing grammar. Today's might be a lot of review. People in first class did pretty well with it. But we're going to talk about independent and dependent clauses, and this is a prereq to talk about commas and colons and semicolons, which were things that were common errors on the mock. So an independent clause is just a sentence that can stand on its own and still be a complete sentence. As you can see there, that is a strong independent dog who don't need no man to walk it. Independent clauses are very similar. In order for something to be an independent clause, aka an IC, you'll hear me call them ICs and DCs a lot. In order to be an IC, a sentence needs to have a subject, which is a noun or a pronoun, a verb, and be a complete thought. Examples. Snow fell from the sky in some parts of North Texas this weekend. Snow is the noun, fell is the verb, and then from the sky in some parts of North Texas is a complete thought. My cat knows how to play fetch. That is a true statement. My cat is the noun, knows is a verb, and then how to play fetch is a complete thought. So notice that in the first sentence, the verb is something that's like an obvious action. All the other ones are sort of like state of being verbs, but those still count. Speaking of cat, she's scratching my chair right now. Stop it, chicks. I had a really hard time falling asleep last night. I is the pronoun or the subject, had is the verb, and then the blue is a complete thought. And my mom was watching Mariposa de Barrio on Netflix all weekend, which is also a true statement. If you don't know what that is, it is the life story of Jenny Rivera. And there's like 9 seasons, so it's going to be playing in our house for a while. Okay. Dependent clauses is any part of a sentence that can't stand on its own and be a full sentence. Usually it's for extra information or to transition, but I'll show you some examples of that here. Here's my little picture. When a dependent clause doesn't have an independent clause with it, everything burns. I'm just kidding. But it's not a full sentence if it's by itself. Okay. Different types of dependent clauses. You guys don't have to remember all of these terms off to the left. This is just to show you what the different kinds of dependent clauses are. You probably know these things. You see them with commas around them. You know that they're dependent clauses, but maybe didn't know like there's a specific name for each type of dependent clause. But this is just to show you the different types that you'll see. So transition words First, preheat the oven to 350 degrees. I couldn't think of a sentence there, but we made cookies last week, and so our oven broke. Now our oven's broken, and we didn't get to finish making cookies. But anyways, it'll get fixed. So that is a transition dependent clause. Preposition, after school, that is a dependent clause. I'm going to take a giant nap. That is a true statement. Infinitive dependent clauses. To get a good grade in this class, you must laugh at my jokes and not make fun of me when I call numbers letters, letters numbers, whatever. I'm just kidding. Okay. A positive. So this is anything like when it renames or gives another name for the noun. So for example, Carl Azus, the anchor on CNN 10, tells cheesy puns. That middle part, the anchor on CNN 10 is dependent clause. You can take that out and it would still be a full sentence. Carl Azus tells cheesy puns. Participials, having enjoyed the Animal Farm Chapter 3 audiobook, the student subscribed to Ms. Hernandez's YouTube channel. Relative, so when you add extra information about somebody, Dr. Blake, who is a kind person, fixed my broken teacher desk for me. That is also a true statement. Interrupter, so where you just add an extra comment, a side comment, sometimes shady like this one. Mario Rodriguez, and also now Luke, not surprisingly, made fun of me during class again. And direct address, this is my favorite thing to say if you don't know me. Listen, Linda, I did not take the cookies from the cookie jar. If you guys haven't watched that video, it's really cute. The Listen, Linda video, it's old. All right, y'all, we're going to practice here. You have two options off to the side. Those two options are IC and DC. Go ahead and read the sentence and choose what kind of clause is the underlined section. Is that an independent or dependent clause? IC or DC? The underlined portion. Great, I have responses so far, and correct responses from Bianca, Drake, Ian, Luke, Martin, and Oscar. And Jennifer, going to close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, just waiting on one more, and 1. The correct answer is DC, and this is a true statement. My brother last night did indeed ask for hot Cheetos, and so I knew that he was not happy with the food. My mom didn't get it, but I understood it. Unfortunately for him, all we had was regular Cheetos. Okay, and here's what my mom cooked for dinner that my brother didn't like. Go ahead and choose which one the underlined section is. Is that an IC or a DC?
Is this the smallest class you have?
Yep. Small but mighty. Yeah, the other ones are still in the 20s, I think, for most of them. It's okay, though. All right, I got responses from Bianca, Eric, Ian, Luke, Nayeli, and Oscar, and Alondra, waiting on 4 more. I'm going to go ahead and close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, where'd y'all go? 1, come on, Demetrius and Jennifer. All right, I'm going to lock this up. Great. Correct answer is IC. So if you pull this by itself, my mom made sopa with cabbage, tomatoes, and corn for dinner last night. That is a full sentence. Knowing how much I love soup is a participial kind of dependent clause. It's extra information, right? So that by itself, that middle section, cannot stand on its own. Notice that there are commas to separate the dependent and independent clause. That's not always the case, and we'll see an example of that later. To get ahead on my homework, I read all of Animal Farm over the weekend. What kind of clause is to get ahead of my homework? All right, I already have responses from Bianca, Drake, Ian, Nayeli, Oscar, Luke, Alondra, Ian, I don't know if I said that already. Waiting on 4 more, 3 more, and I'm going to close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Awesome. Got everybody answered. Correct response is DC. All correct. Very good, y'all. All right, next one here. I am so impressed by you scholars for adjusting resiliently to distance learning. The underlined portion is scholars. What kind of clause is that? Oh my goodness. You can see my cat behind me. Anyways, correct responses from Drake, Ian, Jennifer, Martin, Nayeli, Oscar. Have a response from Alondra. Great, waiting on 3 more people. I'm going to close this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay, got everybody responding. Why are you so crazy today? Sorry, I'm talking to Jinx. Jinx is her name. All right, correct response here is DC, dependent clause. Scholars is the direct address kind of dependent clause, sort of like the listen Linda, and so that is dependent. All right, underlined portion here. I could not survive one day without my most loved possession, comma, my personal heater. What kind of clause is the underlined portion? Great, I have responses from Bianca, Drake, Eric, Ian, Alondra, Jennifer, Martin, Nayeli, and Oscar. Waiting on 2 more. Great, I have all responses and all correct responses. The correct answer is icy. This is in a positive kind of direct clause or dependent clause here. My personal heater is renaming the love possession. My personal heater would be the DC, and the underlying would be the IC. Good job, y'all. All right, your exit ticket is going to be the following 3 questions. This question, this question, and this question. I'm going to go ahead and make this a student pace and set a timer for 5 minutes. At the end of that timer, your screens will lock, and then we will go over the answers. If we need more time, more than 5 minutes, I will adjust the timer. I think this should be good. Great, I already see Bianca on the exit ticket, Luke, Oscar, Drake, Ian, Alondra, Jennifer, Nayeli, Demetrius, Martin, Eric, are you there? I don't see you typing yet, but see if you're on a different question.
Oh, it's just for the first one, miss? I thought it was for like the other ones.
Oh, you're on number 3.
Yes.
Yeah, you're good. Do them in whatever order you want.
Alrighty, thank you, miss.
For the definitions for independent and dependent clause, feel free to put those in your own words. You can also scroll back to the slide where I went over the definitions. Waiting on one more response, and then we'll go ahead and close out the exit ticket. Thank you guys if you're done for being patient. I'm gonna honor this last minute here for the one response we're waiting for, and then we'll go over the answers. Cool, I got all responses in. I'm gonna go ahead and lock up our screens. Alright, so correct answer here was just whether to say that independent clause was a full sentence that can stand alone and make sense, and a dependent clause does not make sense if it stands alone. Other correct answers would have been if independent clause has a subject, verb, and complete thought. Dependent clause does not. Alright, correct answer here was DC. DC. So this here is not separated by a comma, but it is a preposition. It is a prepositional kind of dependent clause before the start of homeroom. This could also go before a sentence. If dependent clauses go in the beginning or middle, they usually have a comma, but if they go at the end, they don't always have a comma, but they are still dependent clauses. That is about Conlon. He does indeed like toast. And this one here, the correct answer was to be an IC. An IC. This one's a little bit tricky because the IC is shorter than the DC. Sometimes that happens, but the subject, the verb, and the complete thought here is that Ms. Hernandez felt honored. Who was Gael's first Rickroll of the semester could not stand on its own and be a complete sentence. It is long, that does not make it an IC. So, good job, y'all. Alright, next thing we're gonna do here, you guys already put in some answers here. Some of you put in weird scores though. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys a link to PowerSchool in case you don't have it. And what I want you to look at, make sure that you are in quarter 3, because we are in quarter 3 now. And I want you to look at the score that I put in for Ren Star, beginning of the year Ren Star. Once you look at that score should not be like in the hundreds or in the 80s or anything like that. It should be like a single number. There is sometimes like a decimal, so like a 9.2, an 8.2, a 10.5 would all be possible scores, but nothing should be like 100. So look at what the score is, and then I want you to add 2 points to that. So if your score on PowerSchool is an 8.2, then I want you to type 10.2 in the box. That will be your goal for this next Ren Star. I'm going to set a timer here for a minute for y'all to do that. And then I'll talk about what the scores mean. I will answer your question shortly, Ian. Very good, Oscar, typing your math out. It would be an 11.1, Bianca. All right, so the way Renstar gives us scores, it gives us scores in two ways. It gives us a score that tells us grade level, and it gives us a score that tells us Lexile level. The score that is in PowerSchool is the grade level score. So if you got a 9.5, that means that is you are at a 9.5 grade level. The goal for the end of the year is for you to be at a 10, right? Because 10 is 10th grade. So the goal is for you to be at a 10. However, if you're at like a 5, then it's probably not reasonable that you would be at a 10 by the end of the year. So each of you have individual goals. Your goal is to grow 2 points by the end of the year. So say you are at a 6.5, then your goal for this next test would be an 8.5. So you want to grow 2 points, right? It's not reasonable to expect yourself to jump like 4 grade levels in half a year or in a year, but our goal is to get you to jump at least 2 points. So each of your growth goals is different. Tomorrow when you take the Renstar, you're going to get a grade entered by me that is going to be a completion grade just for taking it, and then you will get a separate grade that will be extra credit if you meet your growth goal. Okay, so if you jump 2 points, you will get extra credit for meeting your growth goal. If you don't grow, you won't, like, as long as you completed it, you will get 100 as a completion grade. But if you do grow and meet your goal that you just set for yourself, you will get extra credit. Any questions about Renstar? Oh, I didn't answer your question, Ian. Some of you may have over a 10. So you may have like an 11 over a 10 or 12 over 10. That's awesome. That means you're over grade level right now. I can still see whether you grow because I can look at your Lexile level and see if your Lexile level increases, and I can communicate that to you. Since the highest it's going to give me to put in PowerSchool is a 12, but I'm going to contact you guys individually and tell you if your Lexile level grows, if you're someone who's already at a 12th grade level, because your Lexile could still go up. Cool. Let's see what time it is. Yay, we have enough time to read our homework. So excited. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and project the YouTube video of your homework so that way you don't have to do it tonight. Just go ahead and listen during this, and then I'm going to add some commentary at the end and just like go over some things that are important to note and take away from this chapter. So you can leave the Pear Deck. Actually, let me close that out. Let me close out the Pear Deck. PD 3, 11. Cool. Just come over to my screen on Teams so that way you can watch the YouTube video. It's theater mode this, theater mode. Great, here we go.
Chapter 3. How they toiled and sweated to get the hay in. But their efforts were rewarded, for the harvest was an even bigger success than they had hoped. Sometimes the work was hard. The implements had been designed for human beings and not for animals, and it was a great drawback that no animal was able to use any tool that involved standing on his hind legs. But the pigs were so clever that they could think of a way around every difficulty. As for the horses, they knew every inch of the field, and in fact understood the business of mowing and raking far better than Jones and his men had ever done. The pigs did not actually work, but directed and supervised the others. With their superior knowledge, it was natural that they should assume the leadership. Boxer and Clover would harness themselves to the cutter or the horse rake. No bits or reins were needed in these days, of course, and tramp steadily round and round the field with a pig walking behind and calling out, "Gee up, comrade," or "Woe back, comrade," as the case might be. And every animal down to the humblest worked at turning the hay and gathering it. Even the ducks and hens toiled to and fro all day in the sun, carrying tiny wisps of hay in their beaks. In the end, they finished the harvest in 2 days less time than it had usually taken Jones and his men. Moreover, it was the biggest harvest that the farm had ever seen. There was no wastage whatever. The hens and ducks with their sharp eyes had gathered up the very last stalk, and not an animal on the farm had stolen so much as a mouthful. All through that summer, the work of the farm went like clockwork. The animals were happy as they had never conceived it possible to be. Every mouthful of food was an acute positive pleasure, now that it was truly their own food, produced by themselves and for themselves, not doled out to them by a grudging master. With the worthless, parasitical human beings gone, there was more for everyone to eat. There was more leisure, too, inexperienced though the animals were. They met with many difficulties. For instance, Later in the year, when they harvested the corn, they had to tread it out in the ancient style and blow away the chaff with their breath, since the farm possessed no threshing machine. But the pigs, with their cleverness, and Boxer, with his tremendous muscles, always pulled them through. Boxer was the admiration of everybody. He had been a hard worker even in Jones's time, but now he seemed more like 3 horses than 1. There were days when the entire work of the farm seemed to rest on his mighty shoulders. From morning to night he was pushing and pulling, always at the spot where the work was hardest. He had made an arrangement with one of the cockerels to call him in the mornings half an hour earlier than anyone else, and would put in some volunteer labor at whatever seemed to be most needed before the regular day's work began. His answer to every problem, every setback was, "I will work harder," which he had adopted as his personal motto. But everyone worked according to his capacity. The hens and ducks, for instance, saved 5 bushels of corn at the harvest by gathering up the stray grains. Nobody stole, nobody grumbled over his rations. The quarreling and biting and jealousy which had been normal features of life in the old days had almost disappeared. Nobody shirked, or almost nobody. Molly, it was true, was not good at getting up in the mornings, and had a way of leaving work early on the ground that there was a stone in her hoof. And the behavior of the cat was somewhat peculiar. It was soon noticed that when there was work to be done, the cat could never be found. She would vanish for hours on end, and then reappear at meal times or in the evening after work was over, as though nothing had happened. But she always made such excellent excuses and purred so affectionately that it was impossible not to believe in her good intentions. Old Benjamin, the donkey, seemed quite unchanged since the rebellion. He did his work in the same slow, obstinate way as he had done it in Jones's time, never shirking and never volunteering for extra work either. About the rebellion and its results he would express no opinion. When asked whether he was not happier now that Jones was gone, he would say only, "Donkeys live a long time. None of you has ever seen a dead donkey." And the others had to be content with this cryptic answer. On Sundays there was no work. Breakfast was an hour later than usual, and after breakfast there was a ceremony which was observed every week without fail. First came the hoisting of the flag. Snowball had found in the harness room an old green tablecloth of Mrs. Jones's, and had painted on it a hoof and a horn in white. This was run up the flagstaff in the farmhouse garden every Sunday morning. The flag was green, Snowball explained, to represent the green fields of England, while the hoof and horn signified the future Republic of the Animals, which would arise when the human race had been finally overthrown. After the hoisting of the flag, all the animals trooped into the big barn for a general assembly, which was known as the meeting. Here the work of the coming week was planned out, and resolutions were put forward and debated. It was always the pigs who put forward the resolutions. The other animals understood how to vote, but could never think of any resolutions of their own. Snowball and Napoleon were by far the most active in the debates. But it was noticed that these two were never in agreement. Whatever suggestion either of them made, the other could be counted on to oppose it. Even when it was resolved, a thing no one could object to in itself, to set aside the small paddock behind the orchard as a home of rest for animals who were past work, there was a stormy debate over the correct retiring age for each class of animal. The meeting always ended with the singing of Beasts of England, and the afternoon was given up to recreation. The pigs had set aside the harness room as a headquarters for themselves. Here, in the evenings, they studied blacksmithing, carpentering, and other necessary arts from books which they had brought out of the farmhouse. Snowball also busied himself with organizing the other animals into what he called animal committees. He was indefatigable at this. He formed the Egg Production Committee for the hens, the Clean Tails League for the cows, the Wild Comrades Re-Education Committee. The object of this was to tame the rats and rabbits, the whiter wool movement for the sheep, and various others, besides instituting classes in reading and writing. On the whole, these projects were a failure. The attempt to tame the wild creatures, for instance, broke down almost immediately. They continued to behave very much as before, and when treated with generosity, simply took advantage of it. The cat joined the Re-Education Committee and was very active in it for some days. She was seen one day sitting on a roof and talking to some sparrows who were just out of her reach. She was telling them that all animals were now comrades, and that any sparrow who chose could come and perch on her paw. But the sparrows kept their distance. The reading and writing classes, however, were a great success. By the autumn, almost every animal on the farm was literate in some degree. As for the pigs, they could already read and write perfectly. The dogs learned to read fairly well, but were not interested in reading anything except the 7 Commandments. Muriel the goat could read somewhat better than the dogs, and sometimes used to read to the others in the evenings from scraps of newspaper which she found on the rubbish heap. Benjamin could read as well as any pig, but never exercised his faculty. So far as he knew, he said, there was nothing worth reading. Clover learnt the whole alphabet, but could not put words together. Boxer could not get beyond the letter D. He would trace out A, B, C, D in the dust with his great hoof, and then would stand staring at the letters with his ears back, sometimes shaking his forelock, trying with all his might to remember what came next, and never succeeding. On several occasions, indeed, he did learn E, F, G, H, but by the time he knew them, it was always discovered that he had forgotten A, B, C, and D. Finally, he decided to be content with the first 4 letters, and used to write them out once or twice every day to refresh his memory. Molly refused to learn any but the 6 letters which spelt her own name. She would form these very neatly out of pieces of twig, and would then decorate them with a flower or two, and walk round them, admiring them. None of the other animals on the farm could get further than the letter A. It was also found that the stupider animals, such as the sheep, hens, and ducks, were unable to learn the 7 Commandments by heart. After much thought, Snowball declared that the 7 Commandments could, in effect, be reduced to a single maxim, namely, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. This, he said, contained the essential principle of animalism. Whoever had thoroughly grasped it would be safe from human influences. The birds at first objected, since it seemed to them that they also had 2 legs, but Snowball proved to them that this was not so. A bird's wing, comrades, he said, is an organ of propulsion and not of manipulation. It should therefore be regarded as a leg. The distinguishing mark of man is the hand, the instrument with which he does all his mischief. The birds did not understand Snowball's long words, but they accepted his explanation, and all the humbler animals set to work to learn the new maxim by heart. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad was inscribed on the end wall of the barn, above the 7 Commandments, and in bigger letters. When they had once got it by heart, the sheep developed a great liking for this maxim, and often as they lay in the field, they would all start bleating, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and keep it up for hours on end, never growing tired of it. Napoleon took no interest in Snowball's committees. He said that the education of the young was more important than anything that could be done for those who were already grown up. It happened that Jessie and Bluebell had both whelped soon after the hay harvest, giving birth between them to 9 sturdy puppies. As soon as they were weaned, Napoleon took them away from their mothers, saying that he would make himself responsible for their education. He took them up into a loft, which could only be reached by a ladder from the harness room, and there kept them in such seclusion that the rest of the farm soon forgot their existence. The mystery of where the milk went to was soon cleared up. It was mixed every day into the pigs' mash. The early apples were now ripening, and the grass of the orchard was littered with windfalls. The animals had assumed as a matter of course that these would be shared out equally. One day, however, the order went forth that all the windfalls were to be collected and brought to the harness room for the use of the pigs. At this, some of the other animals murmured, but it was no use. All the pigs were in full agreement on this point, even Snowball and Napoleon. Squealer was sent to make the necessary explanations to the others. "Comrades," he cried, "you do not imagine, I hope, that we pigs are doing this in a spirit of selfishness and privilege. Many of us actually dislike milk and apples. I dislike them myself. Our sole object in taking these things is to preserve our health. Milk and apples, this has been proved by science, comrades, contain substances absolutely necessary to the well-being of a pig. We pigs are brain workers. The whole management and organization of this farm depend on us. Day and night we are watching over your welfare. It is for your sake that we drink that milk and eat those apples. Do you know what would happen if we pigs failed in our duty? Jones would come back. Yes, Jones would come back. Surely, comrades, cried Squealer almost pleadingly, skipping from side to side and whisking his tail. Surely there is no one among you who wants to see Jones come back. Now, if there was one thing that the animals were completely certain of, it was that they did not want Jones back. When it was put to them in this light, they had no more to say. The importance of keeping the pigs in good health was all too obvious. So it was agreed without further argument that the milk and the windfall apples, and also the main crop of apples when they ripened, should be reserved for the pigs alone.
What do y'all think? Do you think the pigs really just can't stand eating milk and apples?
No.
No! Y'all, I love Squealer's voice too. Okay, so things to take away from this chapter. The pigs are bad people. Just kidding. Okay, so the pigs are still running everything. Now they're taking the apples and they're taking the milk, and they're like, we're doing it for your sake, though. Can't you see? And people believe them. Squealer he has been described in earlier chapters as being the persuasive one. So he's the one who they send out to make the speeches. Napoleon and Snowball are still in charge, but notice that they don't agree on things and they have different ways of doing things. Let's see. The pigs have also decided that the best way to learn is to teach the young. And so they go and they take these puppies from their mother and they're like, we're going to raise them right. Little bit shady. The sheep don't really know what's going on, but they know the maxim, and so they're just bleeding it. They're just repeating it, and they're like, yeah, we believe this. They don't really understand anything else. That's gonna be relevant later. Notice also there are other divisions of animals. The cat doesn't really do work, sneaks around. The donkey is very apathetic. Molly, the pretty horse, is still trying to be domesticated, and Boxer, also characterized as not being very smart, right? But is the hardest worker, and basically is carrying the farm on his back, and is very happy to do so. So, just things to keep in mind. Takeaways. That is all I have for y'all. We are only 3 minutes early here. You do not have any homework anymore because we just read it in class. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye, small but mighty class.
All right. Bye, miss. Have a great day, ma'am. Take care.
Bye,
Take care.
you too. I will.
Bye, Miss.
Bye, Oscar. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, Bianca. Bye, Luke. You too, Bianca.